Gracie Jiu Jitsu rocks. Welcome to the Gracie Jiu Jitsu Rocks podcast, a podcast dedicated to Gracie Jiu Jitsu and all things Gracie, including self-defense, competition, anti-bullying, women's self-defense and empowerment, nutrition, and most especially, the people involved in Gracie Jiu Jitsu. This podcast is for the average Joe. It's for anyone who practices, trains, teaches, or just loves to talk about or hear about Gracie Jiu Jitsu. We'll explore the lives of Gracie Jiu Jitsu practitioners, how they got involved in the art, and what effect it's had on their lives. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. Welcome to episode 101 of the Gracie Jiu Jitsu Rocks podcast. As always, I'm your host, Marty Josie, and thanks for listening. Today my guest will be Professor Mike Diaz. But before we get to that, let's start with our quote. The more you know, the less you use. To use less, you need to know more. And that's from Jean-Jacques Machado. All right, Professor Mike Diaz is a Pedro Sauer Black Belt and owner and head instructor at Park City Jiu Jitsu in Park City, Utah. In this episode, we talk about his martial arts journey, the biggest lessons he's learned along the way to Black Belt, his relationship with Professor Sauer, living and training in a high-altitude environment, Ginastica Natural, and hobbies off the mat, including his music, biggest influences of his life, and much more. So I know you're going to enjoy this interview. After the interview, stay tuned for the Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment. And now, without further ado, let's talk to Mike. All right, I'm speaking with Professor Mike Diaz, a Pedro Sauer Black Belt and owner and head instructor at Park City Jiu Jitsu in Park City, Utah. So welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good to be on your show.
My pleasure. Very happy you had the time. So, Mike, let's start just by having you go back to how you got started initially in martial arts. I know you've been doing them for a long time. So what led you into them, and how did that early beginning go?
Yeah. So probably when I was an early teenager, I just, really fascinated with martial arts, seeing it in movies and everything. And so, in Salt Lake back then, we only really had Kempo karate. And I met an instructor there, really nice guy. So I started doing Kempo, and I really liked it, had a lot of fun doing it. And then I went into the military when I was 21. I went into the Marine Corps. And I couldn't do Kempo there, and I was looking around trying to see what else I could find, and I got really lucky. And I was stationed in Yuma, Arizona, and I got to train an art called Kaja Kempo. Some of you may be familiar with it. And what was cool about that, it was an eclectic style, so it wasn't just like a Kempo karate. They had a lot of judo, a little bit of jiu-jitsu, not the jiu-jitsu that we do now. It was more like a ground and pound type of jiu-jitsu. And so I was really fascinated with that, and it was super cool. I really liked it. But then, like everybody else, in the 90s, everything changed. And I saw, Royce Gracie for the first time. And I was a black belt, already in karate. And when I saw Royce Gracie, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing what this guy is doing. And, at that time I was down in Yuma, Arizona. There was no jiu-jitsu down there, no Gracie jiu-jitsu. And so when I got out, I was thinking, man, I really need to do this art. And I thought it was everywhere. I thought you could just go open up a phone book and you could find it and just go start training it. And so when I got back to Utah, I was like, I'll just find Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and start. And what was crazy is that it happened to be in Utah, of all places. And I looked it up, and I went down there, and, Master Sauer, Professor Sauer was running a school here in Utah. So I got super lucky by just coming back to Utah now. Yeah.
Wow. So let's back up a minute. So you got your feet wet, so to speak, with Kempo. I'm very familiar with Kempo. Did it for many years and have a black belt in it. So beautiful art.
Mm-hmm.
And Kajo Kempo. Now that's a very cool art in my opinion, because one of the earliest ones that started combining other arts, or at least as a formalized system, and really bringing things in from other arts, and pretty well rounded, right?
Yes, I think it might have been one of the first eclectic arts.
Yeah.
So they added a lot to it.
Very cool, very cool. But as luck would have it, you were led to jiu-jitsu, and just a mecca of jiu-jitsu and finding Professor Sauer. So how did the first meeting go with him, and just how that early development and you practicing the art, how did that go?
Well, it's kind of funny because, I came from this traditional martial arts background where the instructors were very, they just had a really tough persona about them. And so I had heard about Master Sauer being in Salt Lake, going around, going to these other schools and challenging these guys. And so I was a little afraid to meet him. I was like, man, this guy's going to be so mean. I don't know if I want to meet this guy.
Sure.
But, and then I went down to his academy, and he wasn't there. He was out traveling. And, I met the guys there, a really good group of guys. And so I'd been training for maybe a week or two, and I still hadn't met the guy yet. And then one day I was on the mat, and I was talking to this Brazilian guy, and I was like, man, this guy's the nicest guy ever. Who is this guy? And I still didn't know who he was. And the guy goes, hey, give me a minute. I'll be right back. And he went in the back, put on his gi, and I'd been talking to Master Sauer for probably about 10 minutes before I knew it was him.
Wow. That's very cool.
Yeah. And I was amazed. I was like, this guy is one of the nicest people I ever met. How can he be as tough as he is? So it was really an eye-opener for me.
It sounds like it. I mean, all your experience up until then, where the people that were instructing were really tough guys, like you said, and had a certain persona and a certain disposition. So I'm sure it took you very, very much by surprise to talk to this guy, and who's very down to earth, very chill and relaxed, and yeah.
Yeah, and it was hard for me to believe. Even after he came out and I saw him in his gi, his black belt, I was like, I don't know if this guy's really that tough. He doesn't seem like he is. It was pretty funny.
I'm sure it didn't take you very long to find that out, though.
No, he showed me pretty quick. But he was very nice in the way he did it. That was the other thing. With the first time I ever grappled with him, nothing hurt. I just had to tap.
Wow.
And I was amazed. It wasn't like a physical, I wasn't in pain. I was just in positions where I had to tap.
Yeah, you didn't get brutalized. You just, with that high level of skill, just technically put it on you, right?
Yes, sir. That's what happened.
Yeah, nice. How's that relationship continued to develop over the years with Professor Sauer?
Only stronger. I think, back when we started, back in Salt Lake, there was a group of us that were really tight. We all came up together, and I spent a lot of time in the gym with them. And Master Sauer, his career has always been great, and he's always traveled a lot. So I trained a lot with those guys, and so I don't know if I appreciated it a lot, when I was coming up, what I had, having Master Sauer on the mat instructing us. But over the years, I really realized, the gift that I got. And, so the relationship is a lot, it's grown into a really good relationship. He really supports me in what I do. And anytime I could share the mat with him, I always, try to travel and get to a place where I could, train under him again.
Excellent. Well, what a great opportunity and that you've had to have that relationship with him over a number of years and really fully benefit from his keen insight and, of course, exceptional knowledge.
Yes, sir. I've been very lucky that way.
I was doing a little background just to try to learn more about you for this episode, and read up on some stuff, and then I saw a YouTube video with you and Professor Alan Hopkins, and you were showing us really cool shoulder lock from side control. So I just wanted to say how much I enjoyed watching that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was a pretty fun experience going out there and filming for the jiu-jitsu mag.
Yeah, nice. Professor Hopkins, he was actually on the show as well. How long have you guys known each other?
So I've known him since, probably like 1997.
Wow.
Like I said, back when we started, there was a group of us, a super tight group of us that always came up together. Professor Hopkins is one of them. He was ahead of me. He was running the school back then, and so when I met him, really nice guy. He kind of kept me on the mat, but it was super cool because all the guys that came through the gym at that time, we all became like a really close family, but we were super competitive. And so we never wanted to miss a class, because if you missed a class, you thought one of your buddies, learned something.
Right.
And, he's gonna have something on you. So the relationship that was built back then was amazing. Like, I'm probably closer to those guys than my own family.
Wow, that says a lot. Can you name a few of those guys that stand out in your mind?
Oh, for sure. So, we have Johnny Colquest. He's the one that's running Unified Jiu-Jitsu here in Salt Lake. James Gardner, he also runs that school down there. Paul Sizemore, a good friend of mine, a beast on the mat. He was a lot younger than me. He was probably 18 when I started training, and just an amazing guy. We lost him maybe a couple of years ago. Sean Weaver, he was one of Master Sauer's first black belts. So there's just a good group of guys that, are still training and still, really tough guys on the mat for sure.
That's great. How cool is it that you have that group, that you've been in each other's lives for so long, for so many years, and just still to have that bond? That's a really cool thing, all through jiu-jitsu.
I think it's really special. I thought that's the way all jiu-jitsu schools were. I thought there was just a group of guys that came up together, stuck together, and then went off. And, even if they opened up gyms, they're still really good friends and train together. But the sad thing is that's not really how it is all the time.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Like you said, you don't always know what you have until you go experience something else, and you're like, wow, I had it. I knew I had it good, but I had it even so much better than I even realized. So it's true.
Yeah.
All right. So what are some of the lessons that stick out to you that you've learned on your way to black belt, or even, now that you've been a black belt, what are some things that you feel like jiu-jitsu's taught you that really stand out to you?
I still think that, humility is the biggest thing, and the longer I've been training, the more, I have to use humility, when you're young and you're coming up, and, you have to be humble because you're going to get tapped, the mat will make you humble. But even after you get your black belt, and you're getting older, as the years go on, you're getting older. And you may not be able to perform the way you used to when you were younger, but now you have that black belt wrapped around your waist, and you still need to be humble. It's the only thing that I think that keeps us on the mat, really, after you've been training for so long. You especially if you're an instructor, and if you're training with your guys all the time. I train with all my guys. And, you get a guy up to brown black belt level, you brought the guy up, he knows your game. He knows it. He's coming after you. And if you don't have a good, humble mindset, it's going to be really hard for you. So I think that's still the most important thing.
That's a great one, man. That being humble is, the opposite of coming from the ego. And I think that's a hard lesson for a lot of people. And I think the more we can, know that and embrace that concept of humbleness and not being led by the ego, the better we'll be off in so many ways, but also the happier we'll be, to tell you the truth. Because ego only takes you so far, and eventually you're forced to embrace some humility in one way or another.
Yes, sir. And it's the only way you can learn. Right. I mean, the ego will keep you from learning. Being humble, you can learn from anybody. You can learn from a white belt, you can learn from a blue belt. And I tell my guys that all the time. I have I just promoted him to black belt, but I had a brown belt that I used to love taking his classes. you know, and people would be like, man, you're going to take his class. I'm like, I wouldn't miss that class, because I think the knowledge that, or the you know, just the view that they have, they're in a different place. You know, they see things a little different, and you have to be humble enough to accept that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that attitude, because when you open that up, you know, you open your attitude and your mindset of, I can learn from anybody. And when you're open to learning from any source or anybody, instead of some, you know, little hierarchy of importance, you know, based on belts only, then, I mean, that closes you off. But when you're open to that, it's so much better. You can constantly be learning from everybody, and it just adds a lot to your journey, you know?
Yes, sir. I agree.
All right. So living and training out in Utah with such a high altitude area and environment, how does that affect your training? I would think it does. And how does it affect your training, or are you just so used to being there, it's not a big deal?
You know, for me, I think I'm so used to being here that, you know, I don't recognize it enough in my own training. But you know, I'm in a ski town. I'm up in Park City, Utah. You know, a lot of people come up to the vacation, so we get guys from all over the world that come up there, and it's pretty funny, because you'll get a guy that comes from, you know, sea level, and they'll come in there and they're used to training a certain way. You know, they're used to, you know, at a certain energy level,
Right?
And they forget where they're at, and then they realize, you know, maybe even after 2 minutes, they're like, oh my gosh, this is different. You know, it's almost like fighting two people.
Wow.
You know, because, you know, you see them gas, and then you see that, you know, they can't figure out what's going on. You know, and so a lot of times I got to talk to the guy and just be like, man, you're not used to the elevation. You know, it's not your game, it's not your athleticism. It's just you're not used to this elevation.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes a difference if you're not one like yourself that's been in it for a long time. Going into that environment certainly is different.
Oh, for sure. You know, I had a black belt and a purple belt come out to Park City 2 years back, and it was just funny to see like the mindset between the purple belt and the black belt, and they were both really good guys. And the purple belt was super hungry, super game. He wanted to train. They took class, and he wanted to train right away. And so we were like, don't worry, you know, in the class we'll train. And so at the end of class, you know, we start open mat. I set everything up. And the purple belt just went for the guys. And he lasted maybe 5 to 10 minutes and was gassed. And it wasn't because he wasn't good. He forgot where he was at. But the black belt that came with him, I think he felt it. He was like, oh, there's something a little different here. So within the first couple matches, he adjusted his game. He was smart enough to adjust his game, and he made it through the whole night. You know, and it was a tough night, but it was cool to see. You know, he had enough experience behind him to realize, you know, I can't fight at the energy level I'm used to. I have to back it off, use a little bit more skill, a little bit more technique. And it was really cool to see the two people that night.
Wow, what a cool, insightful experience to be able to observe that, because, you know, it's not just your level of technique and skill, but that being seasoned, a little wiser, maybe further along in your journey as a black belt, that goes beyond technique, and that plays out in other ways like this, you know, changing your game and realizing the need for that. That's a big insight.
Yes, for sure. I agree.
All right. So I know one thing that you're also into is Ginastica Natural. And I believe you're a certified instructor in that and do a lot of that, offer classes at your academy. So tell us a little bit about how you got involved in that and what that's like for you, what that practice is like for you.
Okay, yeah. So, you know, I always say, you know, I have to be one of the luckiest guys on the mat. You know, I probably don't have a lot of luck in other areas, but on the mat, I'm super lucky because, you know, I remember back in the 90s seeing Master Alvaro Romano on old VHS videos. And I was like, wow, this is amazing what this guy's doing, the breathing, the movement. And I knew right away it was probably the best thing for jiu-jitsu. But at that time, he was in Brazil. You know, I didn't have any money. I couldn't go to Brazil. I was, you know, a blue belt, you know, struggling to do jiu-jitsu. And so forever, I was just amazed at what this guy was doing. And then maybe like 8 years ago, I was able to get in contact with him. And he actually came out to my school and stayed for a couple weeks with me, which was amazing. You know, just his journey and his life I got to learn a lot about. And then we trained for 2 weeks, and I got certified in Ginastica Natural. But I guess the thing that I was looking for the most is I was already a black belt, and I was looking for something to improve my game, to change my game. And I've always been kind of a little stocky guy, a little, strong, like stiffer, and when I met him, I was like, Master Alvaro, I want to, something to really happen. He's like, don't worry, this will do it for you. And I was like, okay. And so I started doing the Ginastica, and it actually changed my body. It changed a little bit the way my body looked, and it definitely changed the way I moved. And then it changed the way I fought. And I was like, wow, this is exactly what I needed, but I didn't realize that. And it probably took me a good year of doing Ginastica to really see the benefits from it for me.
Wow. Sounds like it's had a profound effect on a lot of areas of your training.
Oh, for sure. His outlook on training and the body's totally different. The movements that he does, like I couldn't figure it out at first. I was like, because it wasn't like he was telling me, Mike, do this move and it will help you here. He wasn't telling me those things. He was just like, you do what I'm telling you to do and you'll see the improvements. And it was really hard for me to wrap my head around. I was like, I want to know that if I go for a move, whatever you're teaching me is going to help me with this move. And that's not the way it worked. He's like, you do this system, you keep doing this system, and then when you train, your training will be better. And then after a while, I was like, oh, well, in the middle of my training, I can move like this. I can do these movements that I never thought I could do. And then, my strength was increased, which was really amazing to me because I used to do, I was with Jim Jones for a long time. And, I got really big and strong in there. My fitness level was really high. But the strength that I got from Ginastica was different. It was more applicable to the mat, if that makes sense.
It does. I think you're talking about more functional movement, and a lot of people, when they first think of functional movement, is just more of a flow and the ability to move more freely, which it certainly does entail that, and that's probably the biggest thing that draws me to movement-based methods like that is, like you said, when you're talking about being a little stiff, I tend to be somewhat stiff as well. So doing things that allow my body to move with more grace and ease, flexibility, I'm all for, but also developing functional strength, so strength that you can use and when you're doing certain kind of body movements or that kind of thing. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. One of the biggest things that I saw too was, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Jim Jones. It's like a CrossFit workout. And when I was with those guys, we used to do, a lot of muscle ups on the pull-up bar. And, I was strong and I could throw myself up and do a muscle up on the pull-up bar. But then when I started training with Master Alvaro, I started doing the Ginastica. And one day I had a pull-up bar in my gym. And I thought, I'm going to try a muscle up again. And just from the training with him, the functional movement, I threw my body up during the muscle up. It was the easiest I ever did. I didn't have to muscle through it. I just threw my body, and it was like my body knew the motion that it had to do that move. And after that, I was like, wow, there's really something to this for sure.
That's very cool. Very cool. So now you teach it. How often do you teach it? Oh, I know you teach at your academy, but also do you travel to do seminars with that as well?
I do. Every once in a while, I get out and do a Ginastica seminar. When I do jiu-jitsu seminars, I usually always start with some form of Ginastica, and then I'll end with Ginastica. At my academy, I can only teach it, like at a class, I probably teach twice a week. Because I train a lot, I teach a lot, and then with Ginastica on top, I'm probably overtrained most of the time.
Yeah.
But my morning routine, like if I wake up and I have time, I try to do a little bit of Ginastica just for myself, just to keep me moving good.
Yeah, I start my morning every day with Ginastica and other that kind of movement and breathing, because I gotta kind of grease the gears, as I put it. If not, it sets the stage for your whole day, right? It gets everything moving, ready to go, but also activating the breathing, and then just the mindset while you're there. You get into a real positive place and ready to start the day in a really great state.
Oh, for sure. Especially as we get older, we need it.
Yes, and that's exactly why I'm doing it. As I get older, yeah, I find that if I don't do a lot proactively, I can definitely feel it a lot. So I'm really committed to doing everything I can to aging, gracefully and the most healthily I can. So that's one thing that keeps me committed to doing it every day. I'll tell you with the Ginastica and things like that, matching up your breath with the movement is so important. And I know I've seen other movement-based disciplines that have some great movement, but they don't always emphasize, on the hardest part of the movement or certain parts of the movement you need to definitely exhale, things like that really helps it stay fluid.
Oh, for sure. And especially when we grapple, we need that kind of breathing, for endurance.
For sure. All right. So you also, we're thinking about hobbies off the mat. You also play music, right?
I do. It's been, it's kind of funny because I didn't grow up playing music at all. And my girlfriend actually had a piano, and she put it in my house. And I never played it. It just sat there. It was kind of like a glass on it every once in a while.
Right.
It's just a nice little table.
Yeah.
And, maybe, I think it was probably about 10 years ago, I decided to take a piano lesson. And I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. And so I started playing the piano. And it was like a new love for me. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for so long. It was kind of nice to have something that wasn't like jiu-jitsu. It wasn't, a physical thing. It was more of a mental thing. And I learned to love it. And then that opened up. I started playing the guitar a little bit later, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, I'm in a couple bands. So it was kind of a new little journey for me that I really, embraced and I love.
Man, that's very cool, especially to do it a little later, after you've already done a lot of other things, and then to kind of discover that aspect, a whole different area for you to get into. So that's very cool. Tell us about tell us about the bands you're in.
So I'm in a band called Hail Mary, and we've been together probably maybe about 2 or 3 years now. And I don't know, it's just a bunch of us got together and love to play. So we get out, we play around Park City a lot. And then this other band that I'm in, it's called Free to Alien, but that's their band. I just go up and play with them every once in a while. And it's just a part of my life that I really love. But I still have to owe it all back to my jiu-jitsu training, because I figured if I could do jiu-jitsu, which I think is one of the hardest things to learn out there, and I just took my mindset that I had on the mat, like I just was never going to quit. I was going to keep going. I wasn't going to stop, and I applied that to the music, and that mindset is what gave me the ability to learn how to play an instrument, and I thought that was pretty cool.
That's very cool. And I applaud you for being willing to have that white belt mindset in that area of your life, right? So many of us,
sure.
when we get to a certain level with something, we just kind of want to stay with that persona and not take on new things that get us out of our comfort zone and make us the beginner. But being the beginner with a beginner's mindset and that curiosity matched with the commitment and commitment to stay the course. It's a great thing. It sounds like you've definitely had both of those going into this.
Oh, for sure. And the other thing I think about too is that, back, in the 90s when we were coming up, like, jiu-jitsu wasn't everywhere. Like I remember going to San Diego and walking on the beach, wearing old Hunter tank top, and nobody knowing what Hunter was, nobody knowing what jiu-jitsu was. And this is San Diego, and so there wasn't a lot of jiu-jitsu out there. So if you wanted to learn jiu-jitsu, you had to sacrifice. Like you had to, there was guys that were moving across the country just to Utah, to learn jiu-jitsu. And then as you kept progressing, we still had to seek out. We had to go and look. We had to work to find things. And that, today, there's jiu-jitsu everywhere. Guys wake up, they have to drive 10 minutes to the school.
Very true, very true.
And I think that when you come up like that, it kind of wires you to keep searching, to keep working, to keep looking for things. And I think that's super healthy. I really do. I think, guys have a little bit easier now. It's right there for them. They still have to work. I think they get better quicker. Mm-hmm. But I think, when you come up and you really have to work to find what you want, I think, there's something really special about that too.
I agree, and I think it makes you appreciate it on a different level, or at least in a different way. I mean, think about if you were applying the same thought to you're gathering your food. If you were out somewhere in nature and food wasn't all around you, and you really had to kind of go look for it or work for it, you're going to appreciate when you eat, right? Compared to
sure.
if you go to the grocery store and there's just everything you can imagine at your fingertips. Yeah, you may still love food, but it's just a different way of connecting or thinking about it,
No, that's for sure. That's the truth.
All right, so let's talk about influences on your life, Mike. Who are some of the people that stand out? I'm sure there's a lot of different people, but who are some of the people that stand out in your mind who've had the biggest influence on your life? And that could be either personally, professionally, jiu-jitsu, or any other, or otherwise.
Yeah, the first person, I'd have to say would be my dad. My dad taught me what it was like to have to work for something. I grew up playing sports all the time, playing football, baseball, and I don't remember a day that he didn't say, "Hey, Mike, let's go outside and play catch. Let's go outside and do something." And, I don't think it was because he really wanted to spend the time with me. I think it was mostly because he wanted to show me that if you want to be great at something, you have to work, And it was really, and I didn't realize that when I was younger. It wasn't until I got older that I realized it. And he did such a good job that it was ingrained in me. It was like, you may not want to be good at something now, but one day you're going to want something, and you're going to have to work, and you're going to have to work every day for it to get it. And that lesson has stuck with me my whole life, even to this day. Right now I do a lot more coaching than anything, and that's what I try to, everybody I coach, that's what I want them to know. So I think my dad would probably be the first one. After that, I think Master Sauer. Master Sauer has probably been the biggest influence in my life. Not just on the mat, off the mat. I was super fortunate to meet him. So he would probably be the next one. And then my daughter, I know that sounds kind of weird, but, I was a single dad. Raising her. Her mom left when she was really young. And it changed my life. I was fresh out of the Marine Corps, and then I had a child, a little girl. And, I had to raise her. She grew up on the mat with me. So probably those three people for sure would be the biggest influences in my life.
Man, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. I'm inspired by it because when you're talking about your dad and your relationship and what he modeled to you, I have a 13-year-old son who will actually be 14 in January, and I'm constantly trying to instill that knowledge with him. So hearing that from you has kind of re-inspired me to make sure I continue modeling what I think is really going to serve him well. So thanks. The Master Sauer, obviously, man, you're not alone. There's so many people that have gained so much from having him as a role model and having him influence their life. So that certainly get that. And then your daughter, man, I don't think that's strange at all to mention her. I think having a child changes you in so many ways and changes your whole perspective. I also have a daughter, and man, there's nothing like it. It's a whole different kind of love. It changes your mindset to being very selfless and really making sure you do what's best for them. And great that you guys, great that she grew up on the mat, so to speak, and you've had that relationship. Beautiful thing.
Sure. Thank you.
Yes. So out of all the things that you've been able to do and accomplish, Mike, so far in your life, what stands out as the thing you're the most proud of?
Well, like I said, being a dad probably be one of the most proud things. She's 25 right now, and she's out of the house. So I feel like I did my job there, even though it's not over. I still feel like I did my job there. Right. Getting my black belt was probably one of the biggest things, and not just just getting there, just that just what it taught me along the way. I guess is probably one of the biggest. The other thing. And then my students, being able to teach and, see their progression I awarded my first black belt, what was it, a couple months ago.
Wow,
and that was one of the biggest, things. I didn't really think about it too much, but I guess, when I sat back and thought about it, I thought, it was a really big deal for me too, not just for him, but for me too. So I think those things are the things that I think of the most.
That's very cool. I would imagine that would be a huge thing, because obviously for him, but for you to have cultivated that relationship and been committed to it for, a number of years, and to stay the course and teach, as much as you can and influence this person for the good. So I would imagine that'd be just a very proud thing and a very peak experience. So congrats on that.
Oh, thank you.
And I know there's many, many, many others that have been positively influenced by you and what you do on a daily basis. So I want to commend you for that, and tell you I respect you greatly for that. Keep doing what you're doing, man. And anybody else that you haven't mentioned you want to shout out to before we close, Mike?
Yeah, I probably should thank my girlfriend, Ramona Stark. She's the one that holds everything together. She runs both my gyms. She always has my back in everything I do. I'm very fortunate to have her. She makes my life a lot easier. I have a pretty good life. I teach jiu-jitsu all the time. I train. I do what I love, and she makes it a lot easier for me. So I really want to, tell her how much I appreciate it.
Oh, that's awesome, man. So glad that you have her and she has you in your life. There's nothing better than having that person that is a partner, and on so many levels.
For sure.
All right, man. I want to thank you so much for taking time to speak with me and the listeners today, and sharing, more about who you are in your life. So really appreciate that.
Anytime. Thank you.
All right. I wish you a long, healthy, happy life, my friend.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Okay. Really enjoyed that interview. Professor Mike Diaz, what an exceptional person. Really enjoyed the chance to get to know him better. Okay, up next is the Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment. Time now for the Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment. I'm going to make this into kind of two parts. The first part, I'm going to read a few words from Lynn Lane's Morning Mojo, and then we'll transition to the audio portion of a video from Jim Rohn. All right. Life, on average, for a man in America, will yield around 28,000 days. If you're male around the age of 42, you have about 12,000 more sunsets to see and enjoy on average. Each morning results with the withdrawal of one day from our life bank. The great awareness that we should all have is this: if we don't like where we are in life or where we're headed, we can change it. Make it all count by living a life that means something. The life you live is your legacy. If you have a song to sing, sing it. If you have a book to write, write it. If you have something to say to the world, say it. If you have another mountain to climb, climb it. And by all means, never allow others to dictate or direct your life for you. Life is only a flicker to live, and to live on your terms. You are the captain, director, commander, and guide of this gift of life. Make each day count. And now the audio portion of a Jim Rohn video called Why Not You?
I want you to ponder these 4 questions. The first question to ponder when you go home is why? Why go this far? Why try to learn this much? Why study? Why put yourself out? Why try to earn as much as you can earn, share as much as you can share? Why try to become all that you can possibly become? Why develop yourself to the full? Why try to do it all? Why try to take on this much responsibility? Develop every skill you possibly can. See every human you possibly can. Go to every class you possibly can. Touch everybody you possibly can. Why do that much? Why go that far? Why share that much? Why give that much away? Why try to see everything? Why try to do everything? Why try to become everything? The first question to ponder when you go home is why. Here's another good answer to why. It's the second question. Why not? Why not see how much you can earn? Why not see how much you can learn? Why not see how many skills you can develop? Why not see what kind of person you can become? Why not see what kind of influence you can have? Why not see how many people you can rescue from oblivion? I want you to take that personal. Why not? Why not? You've got to stay here till you go. I mean, what else are you gonna do? Why not see how much you can do, how far you can go? Now here's number 3. Why not you? You've got the brains. You can make decisions. You can study the plan. You can change your life. You can grow immensely in the next few years. You can make your dreams come true. You can build a financial wall around your family nothing can get through. You can become healthy. You can become powerful. Why not you? My very last question on the questions to ponder is why not now? There never was a better time. And what a time now for us to take this dream and not let it die. Take this dream and give it life. Take this dream and breathe into it your own personal spirit until finally it becomes a flame that burns around the whole world.
And that's going to do it for this edition of the show. As always, I thank you for listening. Hope you're enjoying the show. If you feel like you're benefiting from the show and want to show your support, you can support us on our Patreon page, a link in the show notes. Please like and follow us on social media and help us spread the word by reposting our posts and telling others about the show. You can leave comments on the website at www.GJJRS.com. You can also go to iTunes and leave comments as well as rate the show, and we would appreciate a 5-star rating, which helps us with our standing in iTunes. You can also leave comments on our YouTube channel. If you have suggestions for the show, please don't hesitate to give those. We always like feedback and suggestions. Okay, that's going to do it. So until next time, this is Marty Josie, and I'll see you on the mat.